Happy Halloween! You've reached the Spooky Signal Watch, your haunt for movies, television, comics, and morgues. I'm your ghost, Ryan Steens. Join me and a crypt full of co-contributors as we exhume cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explode the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay terrified. We're gonna try to make this horrifying. Everybody, and welcome to a spooktacular Signal Watch episode. Today I'm here with
Simon Day, being spooky. Hello. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. And what is our Halloween selection today?
Well, today we are doing the 1988 remake of The Blob. And it actually stars an actor from RoboCop, who plays Briggs, the deputy policeman in this. And in both movies, he has a great death scene. But to quote him from RoboCop, talking about The Blob, I like it. I love this film. It's fantastic. And but actually, like a while ago, I think you watched it, and you were a bit that this might turn into like a presidential debate if I'm Trump and you're Biden. We'll see.
So yeah, I'd seen this one on VHS or cable back. I didn't see it in the theater, but I did see it in probably 89, 89 around when it came out.
Yeah.
And my memory of it was, and I this is because we were just shitty kids. The movie starts with Brian Flagg, played by Kevin Dillon.
We should say spoilers before we go anywhere else. Spoilers, obviously, at this point.
Yes. Jumping his motorcycle and wrecking.
Yeah.
And me and my brother started...
The weight of his mullet dragged him down.
And I'm going to talk about that mullet at length. And he wipes out, and we laughed and laughed and laughed. And my brother, I think, may have been in Driver's Ed at that time. And there he'd watched a film called Rocky the Reckless Driver. And so he became in our minds Rocky the Reckless Driver as we were watching the movie. And we were very much doing the like MST3K thing of just like ribbing this movie, which it doesn't
how dare you
deserve.
I say, how dare you, sir? And how dare you again? I get out my English gloves and I slap you across the face for disrespecting The Blob in that way.
But in rewatching it this time, I was like, I've been a little hard on this over the years for absolutely no reason.
Well, I honestly we'll get deep. We'll get wrestling later, but we'll get in the mud with our tops off later. But yeah, I was actually very surprised that you were like a bit kind of like, a bit kind of throwaway about it, because I'm like, for me, I think this is the great unsung remake of the 80s. I think, The Thing is obviously getting respect now after, wiping out initially. The Fly always did get respect and was a hit. And that's, people always kind of quote The Fly. This is like the third one that like nobody mentions, or if they do mention it, they kind of go, oh yeah, that was kind of a bit gross, or that didn't make any money, they lost money. I'm like, this is fucking great, dude. It's like everything about this is great, I think.
So I think I know why it has that reaction.
Yeah. I mean, it came out. Apparently, it came out a very busy summer, but then they always say that. And I think it got steamrolled by Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which came out just after it. Um, but yeah, and apparently, the director says, it wasn't advertised that well, all the usual cliches. But and to be honest, I don't remember it coming out as a kid. I did my usual got on my bicycle and rode through all weathers for 2 miles to my gas station to rent this. And then I don't know. I remember sticking it on and watching it and absolutely loving it. And we probably rented it again, maybe the next weekend. Um, and even at this point, I'm a big flag waver for this film. I've got the movie poster framed for it. I've got although the movie poster's got a hilarious quote on from we had a teenage pop magazine for kind of like mainly girls called Smash Hits, and there's a quote on the poster, the English quad poster, which says, Smash Hits says, "This is the most smashing film ever." And I'm like, but your target audience can't see it because it's R-rated. So why are you even reviewing this film? But yeah, I even building up to this podcast, I bought myself 2 new Blob t-shirts. One of them is just the image of Paul being melted mid-absorption, just photoshopped.
Yeah.
And the other one, which is more amusing, is a tiny cartoon Kevin Dillon with Shawnee Smith on the motorbike being chased by what looks like a huge piece of bubble gum with all these screaming faces coming out of it. So it's almost like if they made a Blob cartoon, but kept it R-rated. So yeah, so I've actually got 2 new Blob t-shirts in respect to this film.
I appreciate your dedication to this movie because it has been something that you have definitely stuck by in the way I will stick by The Keep for absolutely, like, I have my reasons and I will never put those guns down.
Die on that hill.
Yes. I think so. If you've not, if you've never,
I feel like with The Keep, you have a lot less ammunition than I do with the Blob, though. I mean, I love the Keep. I love the Keep too, but the Keep is very dodgy.
Yeah. So if I was to say why I think this movie probably did not get taken super seriously, because it's a remake of a drive-in classic in the US. The original Blob is a thing, and it was designed to be aimed directly at teens. And it was, I mean, it's about teens driving around in cars, and like it has a hit song that it opens and closes with that was the trendy kind of music for about like one summer in like the mid.
It wiggles and giggles. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And hilariously, I had this great boss years ago, and she was very intellectual. And then one day she's like, "We watched The Blob last night," and I was, because her husband was into horror movies, I was like, "Oh, cool, yeah, that's it." Both versions are, I was being nice, very passable.
Yeah.
And she just breaks out into a little dance, just singing the whole Blob song to me, and I was like, "This is amazing." She's so cool.
Well, I mean, the director of this one, Chuck Russell, who also directed Nightmare on Elm Street 3, he said, because I think they took it to New Line originally, him and Frank Darabont took this to New Line. It
seems like a New Line movie, absolutely. Yes.
And then finally, New Line kind of turned it down. They kind of said, you guys do Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which was a hit, which gave him enough power to take the Blob somewhere else. To TriStar, I think, like eventually. But yeah, it's kind of weird because I've totally forgotten what I was talking about. I had a really good point originally, but I can't remember it. It'll come back.
So I think, when they came to remake this, they didn't change the fact that it was about like
Ah,
teens, and it
thank
was
you.
a yeah, and it was
Well, that's
a
what I was going to say. They said maybe we shouldn't have made it funny. Maybe we shouldn't have had humor in it. I don't think the humor overweighs it. I think it's actually played very well within the film, and when it needs to be serious, it gets serious.
Mhm.
And I don't think a really serious blob would work anyway because the whole original 50s concept is kind of goofy.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying when you sit and think about it. Like, I think that the idea of the blob itself is, and this movie does, and this is where I was like, I've been a little hard on this movie.
Yeah.
The idea of what the blob is and what it does is maybe one of the, like, look, at the end of the day, you can kill Dracula by opening the blinds, right?
Yeah. Uh,
At the end of the day, if you're speedy enough, Frankenstein isn't really a problem.
definitely the
Um,
mummy. Definitely the mummy.
Jamie last night was kind of asking me why the mummy was considered to even be a problem. I think that's where she was going with her line of questioning.
Well,
It's
the mummy, you'd get behind him and then just hold one of his bandages, and he'd kind of be screwed because he'd unwrap himself slowly.
run away from him holding the end of the band. Yeah. Um, Freddy's clearly terrifying because he comes for you in your dreams, and there's
You
nothing
have
you
to
can do
sleep.
about it.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to
and the
sleep at some
blob
point.
is terrifying because it's water, right? It can squish in anywhere, and when it does get you, it's got you. It can jump, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big, scary freaking concept, and the more it eats, the bigger it gets.
Well, also the
And
fact that, which they show in this version, very, very kind of like graphically, you're literally eaten while you're inside it. You can kind of like feel yourself getting eaten. It's not like it just kind of kills you. It's like you're literally absorbed or melted.
sadly, the person who gets it, you really process that with is they've kind of set up the waitress to be this very sympathetic character.
Oh, Candy Clark. Yeah. Well, you
Yeah,
have. I mean, what I love about this film as well is it's kind of nasty. It's like it gives no fucks about
yeah.
characters because, I mean, the big twist, obviously, the big spoiler is Paul, who's kind of set up as that would have been Steve McQueen from the original as the clean cut kind of like jock guy. Nice jock though, as opposed to like Dave Rapist Jock, his friend. Um, but he's set up as a big hero, and then they kill him off in the first third. To make
A
way for
little
the
Janet Leigh with him. Yeah,
yeah, no, totally to make way for the mighty mullet of Kevin Dillon to take over. But it's also funny because Paul's obviously, he's a company man. He's like, he follows the rules. I guess what this blob is saying, the 80s one, is kind of saying, kind of fuck authority, really. Because, I mean, both versions, no adults listen to the kids, and the kids are the ones that know what's going on. But definitely in the 80s version, it's like, don't trust adults either, because, the government created this by accident,
it's an
and they're
interesting
willing to,
twist.
yeah, they're willing to kind of like, wipe the town off the map or at least see what happens to the town without helping it. Um, and the only person who really kind of says, we shouldn't trust these guys and fuck these guys is kind of Kevin Dillon, who turns out to be right.
So, and I think this is where ends up having an issue, and I hate to pick on a particular actor, but like, look, Kevin Dillon has been around for a very long time.
He's got great range. He can do angry or angry.
Yeah, and he's not great in this, and he is absolutely front and center. It was such a cliche to have like the motorcycle guy who's misunderstood in town
Pot of gold,
at the
though.
time. Yeah, I mean, at this point, that's who is the lead in every one of these movies. So it wasn't even really a surprise when they made the pivot here because I hadn't seen the '50s Blob.
Yeah.
Paul is set up as this square, and you don't really think about it a whole lot. He is definitely set up as a main character. So when he's bumped off, it was a complete surprise.
Yeah.
But I really thought it would be the three of them, and then Shawnee Smith would go, "Oh, but I'm really in love with Kevin Dillon and his horrible wig that he's wearing."
I
Which
think that's a wig, dude. I think that's
you think
real.
that's all Dylan?
That's called Dylan, baby.
And he's
I think half the budget of this film went on hairspray for him and Shawnee Smith.
and Johnny Smith's hair is amazing in the first half of this movie. It's like this, like
It doesn't move. It doesn't
sculpted
move.
by Hughes aircraft or something.
So the front of like an aircraft carrier, basically.
Yeah.
Ah,
And she's fine. She's good. She's made a whole career out of being in these kinds of movies, of horror films, and I something I'm really come to appreciate about the horror audience the past 10 years is like A, they're super positive, like to a alarming degree,
yeah,
and B, they stick with their stars. Like
yeah.
they're like, you're one of our people. We're gonna make sure you have a career forever.
Jamie Jamie Lee Curtis, you can be in as many Halloween films as you want.
Yes, Jamie Lee Curtis. We're gonna because we love you in Halloween. We're gonna put you in what I just watched Haunted Mansion the other night.
Yeah.
Um,
Was she in that? Is she in that?
yeah, she plays Madame Leota, the head in the globe. Yeah,
Oh,
the ball.
that's
Yeah,
cool. That's cool.
she's just playing it to the rafters. She's great.
Well,
Um,
she's a rare exception that managed to kind of segue into comedy, wasn't she? But like most of these guys stay in horror. Um, and if you like somebody like Dee Wallace, you might kind of like retire or disappear for a few years, and then the next generation who kind of grew up watching your movies will probably bring you back for their horror films.
Frighteners, man. I still remember when she popped up in Frighteners.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I was just thinking of that actually. Yeah, yeah.
um, but
But I mean,
yeah, so Shawnee Smith is great, but Kevin Dillon it gets
uh,
thrust into this like front role where
do you
they're
think he's bad, or do you think he's just playing it that way? Because
no, he's
I'm not saying he's Daniel Day Lewis, but at the same time,
I think it's
um,
probably a combination of both. I think he was given I mean Kevin Dillon has had opportunity to
because I feel
like
like he's almost playing just himself again. So, and it kind of fits this role pretty well. So, him being like not that bright troublemaker, it's like it doesn't have to stretch that far, you know?
well, the movie clearly thought it was doing something in particular with his relationship with Shawnee Smith. And her character's name is not Shawnee Smith; it's Meg Penny. But it's much more interesting to be able to say Shawnee Smith every time.
Like saying Johnny Smith.
I do. But
I like her character because she starts off, and even this time when I watched it, even though I've watched it a million times, she starts off with like a slightly airheadish kind of cheerleader who isn't a mean girl, but could quite easily be a mean girl, I think. And then I like how she starts questioning authority, like first her parents, and then because of Kevin Dillon, you know, I guess like the government agents or this, these secret scientists or whatever. And then finally by the end, without any wokeness, this is thankfully way before wokeness and all that bullshit. She does kind of like in the last 10 minutes kind of transmute into Ripley. um Although I was thinking, how do any of these guys know how to use these automatic weapons or things because with no training? But she goes full on Ripley at the end, which is kind of cool, and kind of rescues Kevin Dillon, which I thought was very refreshing.
yes, I think that it very much sets them up because it they borrow a line directly from Star Wars
Yeah.
of trying to set him up. Like they're clearly winking at, we think he's Han Solo and she's Princess Leia. We
Ah,
think we have that dynamic. And because she drops the line on him of like, you're pretty good about taking care of yourself.
yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and it was, it took me about 2 minutes. I was like, what, why do I know? Oh my God, it's Star Wars.
We got,
Um,
we got a bad feeling about this.
But I mean, and so there's a lot of like very like filmmakery winky things that I think they're trying to do through this movie, but I think they also probably went over, certainly when I was 14, over my head.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it is written by Frank Darabont, who's obviously
sure.
no fool. And he, we kind of forget he started off writing scripts for like this and The Fly 2. And years before he kind of like, did Shawshank and The Green Mile. So so this dude knows what he's doing. He's an intelligent guy who can write good scripts. So he's gonna reference things and put things in, beyond the Call of Duty kind of.
And I do definitely think this is like a kick above, your whatever Ghoulies 2 or whatever. I mean, it's like there's
Oh
clearly a
yeah,
budget behind this movie. There's clearly like better writing, but I just think that
could could have finished
probably
it. Could have finished it like The Mist, where they just shoot themselves. That'd been great.
spoiler.
Like
Um,
the blob's going to eat us. Let's just shoot ourselves, and the film ends. There you
there was a draft where that happened.
go. No, Frank, stop doing that. Every script.
But yeah, I just think that that's probably it was like having the what at the time felt like a cliche of slobs versus squares or whatever. It was such a thing in the water. It was coming from
It's
summer camp movies and
Revenge of the Nerds, isn't it? I mean, he's
mhm.
Kevin Dillon's obviously this outsider who the only person who's nice to him is the kind of black dude who runs the snow shop. And I'm thinking, how does that? I was thinking, how does that dude keep his business afloat the rest of the year?
I
Um,
had that same thought, but it made me wonder how all ski resort towns operate for
I'm
six
I'm
months.
thinking I'm thinking he must do other things,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I mean, like that's the only guy who's kind of nice to him, and obviously the police harass him a bit, and not be he don't he's like Rodney Dangerfield. He don't get no respect. So he spends his days trying to jump this bridge badly, and crashing. Um, and then and then I guess like his time comes, to be the hero. Um, but like I say, I don't think it's quite as straightforward or as cliched. I think there's a few turns in this to make it interesting.
I do think like my feelings about them kind of deciding that the leather jacket guy, the mid '80s American leather jacket guy, was needed to be the hero and not the square.
Blue collar, baby. It's Bruce
Yeah,
Springsteen going to save the day.
yeah. I don't necessarily think it's wrong, but I also think like beyond that, like the film itself has some good stuff. I really like the way they introduce the blob and bringing it into the doctor's office and everyone kind of like going to kids dealing with the bureaucracy of an emergency room
Oh
for the
yeah,
first time and
the nurse is great, and the doctor. Because sadly, that is kind of like it. When I go for an appointment, they kind of ignore you for 20 minutes, and you're like, I could be dying here.
yeah.
um, so no, they get a lot of stuff, and small town America. The fact that this town is obviously so kind of like I guess we should talk about the '50s Bob a little bit. That was very small town America. Red Menace, literal Red Menace with the blob. Alien invasion, standing in for Russia. What are we going to do? Not none of the adults are listening to us because it's teen culture. So we got to organize and take care of this ourselves. Um, and I like how they kind of put a spin on this. With this, not none of the adults are still very effectual in this film because they either act too slowly, like the sheriff, or they don't act at all, or they actively want to, kind of like see what the blob's going to do, and the town's expendable.
And that feels very '80s. That feels very like
Cynical, very cynical, isn't it?
very yeah, you're coming off of like the '60s and '70s kids are now like getting a chance to make movies. You're
They've
growing
had
up.
Vietnam, they've had Nixon,
You've
so
had nuclear. You're being told nuclear proliferation is a great idea.
got
That
AIDS
there's.
going on.
Mhm. This would have been right at the start of that.
Don't trust the man. Don't trust the
Yeah,
man.
and it's. I think to see some. It's unthinkable to kids today who could reach out beyond their town with a text to the entire planet.
Oh yeah,
That people would think that, well, let's just see what happens to the whole town.
Well, I
This
love.
isn't an era where if you cut the phone line, that's it.
Oh yeah,
So
and I love the opening shots of this where it's almost like if you haven't seen this before, it's almost like has something already happened because there's all these ghost towns, and maybe it's foreshadowing what would have happened if the blob took over. Because everything's gone, everything's empty. There's just newspapers blowing around, and then of course, but we find out pretty quickly it's because this town's so small, everybody's at the football game. So that's so literally everybody's gone to the football game, apart from a couple of cafe owners that are getting ready. Um, and yeah, so these guys, this is small town America, kind of under attack from firstly this alien, well not alien, but this bacteria, a man-made bacteria, I should say, and then secondly from the government who's supposed to protect them from this, because in the '50s version, if the army turned up, they'd be the saviors. They'd be like, "Thank God, here come the army." But in this one, it's like they kind of make it worse,
yeah, yeah, they make it way way worse, and so it does have that interesting moment of we learn the value of a good ratchet set. He's got the ratchet in his pocket and escapes from the van, and Shawnee Smith chooses to stay
he's
in
like
the
MacGyver.
van. Right?
He's like MacGyver with that ratchet. He uses it for lots of different things.
He really does. And I'm telling you, if you don't own a ratchet set, like I don't endorse many things, go to Sears, go get a good ratchet set. It pays off. Um, but yeah, I think that and it also has a couple of issues as far as Shawnee Smith, once she does decide to start taking action, then just starts running face first into danger in ways that don't necessarily make sense. I think
she realizes that her little brother, is still in the cinema, and they're kind of rounding up the townspeople, I guess, trying to like quarantine them or at least keep them together.
Which seems like the first place they would have gone, because you have a lot of people in one place. You would have said, the movie is over. I need all of you to follow me. We're all going to the town hall.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, except I guess people are spread out in different places because I suppose the blob's already taken over the cinema at that point.
He hasn't yet. He hasn't yet. That all happens after they've already like been going door to door and people's houses, waking them up.
Oh.
Like you could have you rounded up the entire, and all that aside, he rushes to the theater as people are all exiting.
Because it's pretty much exactly when the blob starts attacking people.
Oh yeah, so they're running. Yeah, she runs into where she knows the blob is as people are running out. I'm like, you're gonna miss your brother. Like she has to do it for the scenes that are coming to work, but that is the only reason she does it.
Yeah.
So it makes her look insane when you're watching the.
Well, I'll give it the benefit because I mean, to be honest, she doesn't know what's going on in there. She knows.
I think she could guess, and she could also see everyone is leaving.
Oh yeah, but like say Jamie was in there. I don't think you'd just stand outside and go, "I hope she comes out."
I would, I absolutely would, because I'd be like, "I'm gonna miss her. I need to stand here and trust that she's going to follow the massive come with the massive people."
But Ryan,
I don't go running if I'm waiting for her to come off a bus. I don't go running into the bus. But does she know how to get off the bus when there's one way out?
You're not thinking like a 16-year-old though. You're thinking like an
I when I was 16, I very much would have stood outside.
Well, she loves her brother. She
does.
And the annoying best friend who hey, massive points for killing a kid in this, by the way.
Yes.
But because he has a horrible death, because it kind of toys with him as well a little bit. But yeah, then they end up in the sewers, which is kind of cool. I think that's cool. I like the fact that, I mean, I think he could have easily eaten them at that point, at any point. But I like how they look around and the rat disappears that was floating behind them. That's kind of cool. So it's kind of chasing them around. I guess a few government agents are down there. I don't know why. I guess trying to like round it up, which is a stupid plan.
Well, having a machine gun to kill a blob doesn't really make any sense.
You'd have thought
Um,
as they created it, they'd probably know that that wouldn't be any use. But I guess it's mutated, so I guess they didn't plan for it to be a blob. They said,
yeah, but nonetheless, you know that shooting Jello doesn't do much. Like what it told me is they didn't have the budget for flamethrowers.
they had a couple of flamethrowers, didn't they? They didn't work very
Yeah.
well because it kind of blocked them up with a tentacle,
Oh yeah.
so they blew
Forgot.
themselves up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
actually awesome. Um, but I would also criticize their plan at the end where they're like, oh, there's only 3 exit points of this sewer. And I was like, wait, what kind of sewer is this? Because if it's a storm sewer,
Yeah.
then you
But
have
also,
every gutter in town that's actually an exit.
yeah, it doesn't make
And
any sense because it's like,
and if it's a drainage sewer from people's homes, then
but
it
they,
has every toilet and sink in the entire town it could exit from.
but then they haven't actually seen it, have they? Because they've only heard secondhand descriptions. They only see it for the first time, I think, when it erupts, when he's like, shoot them.
Or maybe
Isn't that the
that's
first
true.
time the government people actually see it? Because I think up until then, there's that one sensible guy
Yeah.
going, there might not be a world in about a week. And, and
Yeah.
Dr. Miller is like, shut up. We're going to trap it. It's going to be fine. And it's like, well, if you guys have seen this, you probably need a bigger boat.
It's one big Twinkie. Um,
Need a bigger fire extinguisher.
yeah, it anyway, I did definitely have that thought of like the screenwriters wanted to have scenes in the sewer, but when they're like, we're gonna trap it down there, like it just doesn't
That's the
it's
only
not
weakness
going to.
for me. I think some of and it is an age thing, so you can't be too harsh. But I think the only flaws in this really for me are some of the green screen stuff gets a bit wonky towards the end when they're trying to show the scale of it. But all the
I would
practical stuff
be
is amazing.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to know like if that's an artifact of the green screen stuff not having been cleaned up over the years, which is
Probably a
definitely
bit
an
of
issue with 80s stuff.
probably a bit of both. I think the budget for this wasn't that big. It was like I think 8 million was the budget, and I mean they definitely put all that on screen. Um, but just like the smaller practical stuff, like when it's killing Paul, or even when it's getting the projectionist guy, I think works a lot better. The model stuff than when they have to make it really big with green screen later.
I usually when I watch 80s stuff, to be totally candid, I'm probably running some cycle in my brain where I'm just smoothing all of that out.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I'm aware it doesn't look good, but I'm also like, I don't know if it ever did. It looks, I'm just in the story and it's fine.
yeah. I
I
mean, this carries you along. It definitely doesn't pull you out of the story. I think it's
uh
just like you kind of go, oh, it's almost like these days we don't, you don't want to go George Lucas, but these days you'd go if you could go back and somebody gave you a little bit of money for CGI, that would be the couple of seconds you'd probably put it on.
yes. I think it would be really interesting to see a Blob movie in 2024 that mixes CGI we're due. I mean, it's been 40 years, but
Yeah.
35 of doing this. But one of the things you brought up earlier was the practical effects in this. There were many in this that I don't really know how they did them.
No,
Um,
no. Well, I know I kind of saw a thing where they kind of like said for Paul's death, they almost had almost like a duvet full of this kind of silicone stuff and blue color dye, and they almost like put it on him, and then
he
kind of
was
like,
really in there. That wasn't a mannequin. Okay.
yeah, yeah, he was in there at least for the initial couple of shots, and then they changed it for a kind of mannequin that kind of I guess dissolved. Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff was like I think some of the best effects of the 80s. I'm gonna stick my head out and go, this is up there. I think with Day of the Dead and The Thing, and this has got some of the best effects. I think, and they're gruesome. They're horribly gruesome. I mean, there's a couple that I think one that doesn't work, is Paul's kind of like football player friend who's obviously a slime ball. He's up on Lover's Lane with this kind of girl. He's like this wouldn't play these days at all. He's got her really drunk and he's trying to cop a feel. Um and without him realizing it, she's kind of been blobbed. Which again, it did it really quickly if it took her over and kind of like I guess like filled her up with blob. Um but yeah, she suddenly kind of blobs out on him. And I think when she kind of collapses, that does look a bit like a mannequin kind of being pulled inside out briefly. That doesn't all like a blow up doll, actually. It looks like a blow up doll being deflated really quickly. So that doesn't quite work for a couple of shots, but everything else I think is really good. Like, there's a great bit where Shawnee Smith turns over, I guess like somebody who's fallen in the cinema when she's trying to find her brother, and the person who's on the ground is just kind of half melted, and and you have some more of that later on with some of the government agents in the town center, kind of like various bits of them are missing. You got the sheriff deputy being folded in half, which is a very
Yes.
Jason move from the Friday the 13th films. Um, the blob goes a bit Jason there for a second, but you got some great stuff in here.
We've kind of bemoaned this, I'm sure, over the years on the podcast, but you're hitting this point now where the guys who are doing creature effects and practical effects are absolutely hitting this amazing stride.
Yeah,
Um, and you think about this, Aliens is right at this time, 2 years prior. Um,
yeah.
you
Your
think
Fright
about,
Night.
yeah, I mean, you just have these absolutely, like, not every, like you said, not every one of them is out of the ballpark, but I would say 85% of them are just seamless and really work in this movie.
Yeah, you can feel the artistry.
And then you get, Spielberg puts a couple dinosaurs on screen
Yeah,
in a movie that is largely not CGI, and suddenly everybody loses their damn minds. And I won't go back to the Thing remake because we've already covered that a couple times on here, but
yeah,
the effect of that was just dumb. Like,
yeah,
it's not, it doesn't look better. It's not more convincing. It doesn't more put you in the moment of the film, and you get so much more, it's organic stuff
oh yeah.
using, with how the light bounces off stuff and
Having the actor actually there with the thing, whatever
and
it is.
and like weird sinewy shit. Like I was thinking of you, the hurling person over who's on the ground.
Oh yeah,
Like
well,
the
Shawnee Smith was actually holding a fake arm that came off a puppet. You
yeah,
know, I mean, so she doesn't have to. I mean, I'm not putting her down her acting, because she was great, but I'm saying she doesn't have to act that much. It's happening in front of her. Um, the same as like the chest burster from Aliens. It actually they made it happen, and they didn't tell the actors. Um, Whereas I think CGI has made a lot of that kind of lazy because CGI really should be a tool to kind of like add smooth, like you said earlier, smooth the edges of practical effects or add things that you can't do any other way. You literally can't do any other way. But I think if you can do it practically, you should do it practically. And of course, the reason they don't is it takes too much time, too much money. Um, but ultimately, for the long haul, it's so superior. You know, it holds up so much better. You watch one of those Stephen Sumner Mummy movies now, like The Mummy Returns. It's like a computer game. You know, whereas I mean, it's definitely. I mean, one of the things that's mentioned is like look at the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, where a lot of it is guys in masks and made up guys as the orcs, compared to the Hobbit trilogy, where it's all CGI'd, and you can kind of feel the difference. You can just feel the difference.
I I know we're kind of seeing this weird twist now of the Disney calls it the volume. Star Trek has another name for it, where they're doing CGI as backgrounds, and then everything else they're filming in front of. So I don't know if are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Like the Mandalorian, you talking
Yeah,
about? Yeah,
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 yeah.
Where
So
it's
they're
almost like
doing
a
that
big
now
screen
on.
going past.
Uh-huh. And then, but yeah, so yeah, you can film against it, and it's all in sync, and it looks seamless. Um, but they've started doing it on Star Trek and other shows. And we're
Yeah.
at the end of last season on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. They brought in this Gorn, and they actually had a dude. They built a full freaking Gorn costume,
Nice.
and it was it Gorn in a space. It was very trippy to see this thing they had actually put on screen. But
Yeah.
they're kind of getting back to realizing the how much it helps the scene, how much it helps the actors to have
Yeah.
these practical effects. And so I'm hoping the practical effects houses come roaring back, and it's much more of this sort of combination. I think the Blob is a really good place where you can kind of see like, well, here's the composite effects of the 1980s, and occasionally they don't work super great, but when
Oh
you're in
yeah.
these close-ups with, like you said, the duvet of slime
Yeah.
over the guy, I was just looking at the going, because to me, I would
Oh
have thought they
yeah.
would have killed the actor if they would have done something like that. I
Uh,
guess they figured it out.
well,
Um,
just the fact that you literally see him melt away, it's like, it's great. It's great. I mean, these shots are kind of icky and they're realistic and they're gruesome, and you're like, and they used every trick in the book to get them, you know, um, instead of just just slapping some CGI on there and going, that'll work, which they would do these days. That's actually my only thing against doing a Blob remake these days is I wouldn't want them to just like fuck it up by just like making it all CGI and not as good.
it would also be interesting to see what cultural context they would bring in, in 2023, especially if you made it a teen movie. I don't know how many teen movies there are out there these days in horror land.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, there's still quite a few, I think,
I do think there are. I'm not as in tune with it.
Yeah.
Um,
It'd be interesting, yeah, like you say, if they kind of did a spin almost like kind of like COVID type spin on it, where,
mm,
it's
people
kind
are
of
in
like
lockdown. Yeah.
people in lockdown and like, but then there's this other thing going on they don't know about or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
That could be really interesting.
yeah. But like, but I mean, like I say, I adore this film. For me, it's the unsung third brother of those great remakes from the 80s. It's the one that everybody misses and forgets about. Um, and I'm like, yeah, it's even got a cracking hair band rock song for the end credits. It's like bang. Well, it's got a great, well, for a start, okay, so it's got a great, almost like Die Hard ending where, Kevin Dillon's mate comes out and goes, I told you would get snow. When they like, freeze the blob at the end. And then it's got like the stinger. Normally you kind of roll your eyes at stinger, but this is a good stinger where the Reverend, who got badly burned, has gone a bit mad, and he's out in the fields, um, preaching to his small like converts, and of course he's still got his little bit of blob in the jar, and he's like, "The Lord will give me a sign," you know, and that's great. And then you go straight into the hair band, "Brave New Love" by a band called Alien, ironically. Um, and it's great. It's so good. I mean, I get that Kevin Dillon, you know, isn't Brando, although he's kind of like channeling Brando from the old one, I guess. And I get the fact that this has like the odd kind of flaw, but man, I think it rocks. I think it's a great little Halloween movie.
I agree that if you're gonna watch this movie, and I do suggest you do at some point, but I also suggest you watch the original maybe
Yeah,
after you watch it, just to see like what they that your brain will immediately leap into compare and contrast.
yeah,
Um, but it I would definitely in the month of October. would recommend The Blob. Like I said, I've been hard on this movie since I was a kid, and rewatching it this time, there were a lot of things that I really appreciated about it. I appreciated that like no one's safe, including kids, and
Yeah,
the waitress you're pulling for, and her little love
yeah.
story
They
with the
set up they
sheriff, and
they set up this lovely little, could be romance between the sheriff and the waitress. And he's like, hey, what time do you get off work? And she's like, oh, I'm too busy. And then of course, but she likes him, so she gives him the number.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh. And then of course, when she's getting threatened later by the blob, she's like, I need the sheriff. And of course, he floats past in the blob because he's already fucking dead. And then she gets squished straight after. It implodes the phone booth. And you're like, nobody's safe in this film. I love it.
Yeah. And it does create, some good dramatic tension, absolutely, with that. And yeah, I mean, if you can get past whatever's going on with that mullet, and our lead's limited range, which kind of works in the movie, and you want to learn the value of a good ratchet set, it is a
I, I would have been more
excellent.
impressed if Kevin Dillon had managed to jump his motorbike over his own mullet. That would have been very exciting.
Yeah. I did actually like the bit where he got going so fast he was able to drive up on the side of the it was a very cool practical idea, and I'm glad no one got killed doing that stunt. Like
Oh,
when
when he
they're in the
when he goes around
sewer.
the blob, he kind of goes.
Yeah.
He almost goes upside down.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of the Italian Job as well, the original Italian Job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, that was good actually. Yeah, yeah. Well, it shows all those all those all those years of like practicing jumping ditches in like gorges by himself weren't wasted. So
Yeah.
you know, it came in useful in the end. But
um
but that's a good Frank. I mean, like being serious for a minute, that's a good Frank Darabont script. I mean, everything kind of links up. All these little
yeah.
things that are kind of sprinkled at the start kind of make sense later.
Yes, I think that that's where this movie definitely shows that it's a cut above. It's not, everything doesn't just feel, the randomness of it is planned. The randomness that you might see in a throwaway horror movie does not exist in
Yeah,
this.
and it's got some
When
good
I say
jokes.
randomness is planned, I mean like you as an audience member feel like the world is knowable and random, and a blob is going to pick people off one by one, including small children.
Well, nothing's
Um,
wasted in it. It's like the script is a lot cleverer than I think people take it for at face value. Um, and there's some good jokes in there as well. Like, I do like the kind of like, Shawnee Smith's dad turning out to be the pharmacist.
oh,
And there's
yes.
this joke early on where, Paul's, basically like, waiting for his friend, his kind of sleazebag friend to buy these condoms. And of course the friend's like, they're not for me because the Reverend's there. And he goes, they're for my friend. He's like, he's me and this girl, but he's a bit of an animal. And, I don't want him to get her pregnant. So I make him buy these. And of course, the payoff is later on, when Paul meets the dad's the chemist who thinks he's the animal. So, you know, stuff like that's kind of great. There's a lot of great setting up characters just to kill them horribly later.
I was sure the dad was going to get killed later in the movie, and it didn't happen. Doesn't matter. But I didn't remember who gets picked off and who doesn't, aside from the sheriff and Candy
Yeah.
Clark. Um,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that all the authority figures either get disabled or mown down. So again, it's just the kids who have to kind of save the day. Um, they're very lucky that they already had that snow that snow truck ready to go, full up.
it did make me wonder. I don't remember how the Blob was taken out in the first movie. I just cannot remember.
I
It was cold though, right?
I seem to vaguely remember. I haven't seen it for decades, but vaguely remember. Wasn't it a bunch of fire extinguishers? And then right at the end, they drop it in Antarctica. That's like the last shot. So they
Okay.
they stop it, I think, with fire extinguishers, and then they stick it in the freezer, and then they drop it in Antarctica. But I remember it being kind of pretty hurried, I think.
Okay.
Um, pretty rushed. But yeah, same thing. I guess it can't stand the cold.
Yeah,
Which
because I
I'm
remember that
like,
from the grocery store, which I think kind of takes the place of the movie, or is the movie theater sequence essentially.
well,
Like,
I think both versions have them hiding in the fridge
yeah,
and then not being able to get in the freezer because they're in the freezer. So
yeah.
yeah, it comes under the door in both versions, then kind of pulls back, and they go, "Oh, it doesn't like cold." Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
give it a shot. If it's been a while since you've seen it, it was really easy to find. This
yeah.
is one that is streaming on practically every service. I think it will only cost me like $3 or something to watch, a good blockbuster rental price. Um,
Yeah. It's I totally recommend this. 100%. It's great fun. I'm glad you're slowly warming to it.
if I watch it, every 10 years, in
I
another 40
know.
years, it's going to be my favorite movie.
By the time we die, you'll be like, oh, I love The Blob. It's my favorite film ever. I'll be like, I told you so, and then I'll have a big heart attack, just fall out my wheelchair.
We'll just be laying
And
there in our Kevin Dillon mullet wigs.
I bet last thing I'll
Old
say is
folks
like,
home.
I did it. I made him a believer. um, but no, seriously, it's check it out. It's great fun. Um, yeah, and up there, I think, like I say, with remake of The Fly, remake of The Thing, late '70s remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I think all of those, fantastic remakes. I wish we could remake stuff these days as well. Um, but check it out, guys.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this, and happy Halloween, sir.
Happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye.
Beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides across the floor, right through the door and all around the wall. A splotch, a blotch, be careful of the blob.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.